Shalom, shalom. All praises, honor, glory, and blessings and power be unto Abanoah Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, elder bishops of Great Millstone, and a hearty shalom to the prophets of that body, and shalom to the 144,000 and one third. The elect men, women, and children, may peace and blessings be upon you and your households. Okay, we're going home soon, Yasharallah. We're going home. Things are happening. The signs are there. Okay. And there's so many things going on, so many skirts being lifted in terms of information, be it small, intricate, detailed, heavy, all types of information coming out, which is collectively, putting different pieces from various areas together, building up a picture that we are at the end. All right, Luke 21 and 28. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Because the elect are not going to be like the rest of this crazy world, man. Okay, fair enough. Granted, they're going to be this mobile phone addiction that people have. They can't put that down. I can understand Jake listening to a lesson. You might be listening to a nice track or whatever. You're going for a walk, but for the most part, Jake doesn't focus on their phones the way the rest of the world does, man. Because there's too much going on just to be focused on one or fixated on one particular thing. We see the chariots, we see spiritual numbers, we see other great, beautiful things. We see the news, we see our prophets teaching the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yashai. We see all these things, all these new segments coming out. We see Esau getting SHIT scared about the chariots or the UFO, so-called UFO revealing, the Space Force, instead of the Office of Defense, it was the Office of War, something along those lines. That Trump changed his office defense office to, is it Office of War, something along those lines. So we're at that time, Revelation 11:14, where World War III will kick off. But prior to that, the Charagma. Okay, we're seeing the digital wallet come into play on a heavy basis, where they're saying it's mandatory, it's a must. So we can see all these things. And I came across a news segment, a couple of hours ago, if I can say that, right? And as you know, Esau, the so-called white man, likes to, in his movies and shows, comedy acts, whatever, even The Simpsons and other comedy sketches and other types of animation and movies and commercials, they like to let you know what they are planning to do, or what they are going to do, or what they have already done and will plan to do in the near future. Not that we got very long here, right? Okay, because you've got to understand, most of these movies are based around a Hollywood climate, which is America, but they are movies based, that are fixed, that are the location is Europe or England or Eastern Europe as well. Because remember, America is ground zero. It's Egypt, the new Egypt. It was a beacon of light back in the day. Not so much now. It was a place where people could go from different parts of the world and make it. Okay, other nations, other heathen nations, they can make it there, right? But it's ground zero. That's basically, America would be like the head office, and the other Edomite strongholds are like satellite offices, or part of that same company, if you want to put it that way. But anyway, in their movies, I like to let you know what they're going to do. Revelation of the method. They let you know this is the so-called elites, the powers that be, who like to prophesy on the left-hand side. Movies like The Purge, martial law-esque type movies like The Siege with Denzel Washington, The Book of Eli, what's the other one? The Road, Mad Max, the zombie-esque type movies, and we've seen these things actually play out. All right. And now the last one I think we pretty much everybody watched was Leave the World Behind. All right. A thriller about a family vacation disrupted by a blackout in New York City, and the uncertainty that follows. And another one, American Blackout, a TV movie about a nationwide power grid failure in the United States and the breakdown of society. Okay, they let you know what they're going to do. Because once the electricity goes, everything goes. All right, you can't shower, you can't keep yourself warm, you can't cook anything. You know, obviously people will start breaking out the coals and the barbecues and start maybe cooking shit in the back. You know, because the stuff that's going to go off with a short duration. You know, when this freezers start defrosting, right? But what about once all that food is gone? Right? It's going to get grimy out here. The trigger effect back in '97, a thriller that explores how a seemingly simple power outage can trigger a chain of escalating and unfavorable events. The Blackout 2019, a post apocalyptic thriller where life on Earth is rapidly destroyed except for a small area in Eastern Europe. Okay? Now, we just had a blackout here recently, probably like, I think it was under a year ago. And it was for like, what? Shit, probably about 2 hours. But I saw women outside with their pushchairs and prams, like 2, 3 in the morning, walking back and forth because I believe it was during the summer, so it was hot. So they're trying to keep themselves cool and they was to keep their children cool. That's how much things went. People went like people out and about, roaming around, trying to find a way, you know. And then electricity went on for about, back on after about 2 hours. I woke up in the middle of the night and the fan wasn't working. I said, "What the fuck?" Right? There was no phone, no mobile phone signal, you know. But the Lord guided, man. And then eventually it came back on. But we knew the Lord is letting us know that, letting me know as well, another Jakes that have gone through it, that, yeah, that time is coming. And what's Esau been saying now? The risks are getting very high. Britain could face tight days in winter energy supply. All right. Which means there's a possibility of blackouts. All right. Yeah.
Let's talk to Andrew Montford, director of Net Zero Watch, because it turns out that 5 water firms are going to be allowed to raise their bills between 1% and 5%, which is not particularly green, I wouldn't have thought.
And plus, not to mention the financial aspect, bills going up. So that's probably screwing people over as well financially. People can't afford it. Prices are going up, but the service is trash. Energy supplies are low. You know, you can feel it in your. You can look at light bulbs. 100-watt light bulb that one used to be bright, like light up the whole room. Now that keeps getting dim because of the flow of electricity. You can see it. If you got your fan on in your room, you can see that it's not working at full capacity. You know, things are going to get grimy out here, man.
But also, we've got some other news. Winter blackouts are coming apparently to us because the risk is getting.
Let's just see the news. Yeah, this is from the 9th of October. So this is from last Thursday. So approximately what? 5 days old.
Very, very high. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, my apologies for the long preamble there about Keir Starmer's walk in the woods with Gary Neville. I mean, I don't quite know what they're doing and what they're playing at. But listen, it looks great, doesn't it? A winter blackout is coming, and we probably have to be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, I think National Grid, NESO, we should call them now, are trying to put a positive spin on it. I think they're saying that things are a little better than they were last year. But the thing I think people need to understand is that NESO.
Woe means evil times. See the words that Esau uses? Winter woes. Woes means winter evil times. Okay? That's what's coming. Ephesians. I just want to read a couple of scriptures. Ephesians 6:11. Put on the whole armor of the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yashai, that ye may be able to stand that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Okay, that's 11, Ephesians 6 and 11. Verse 12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in higher places. Okay, so let's read verse 13 as well. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armour of the Most High Yahweh Hashem Yashai, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness. Okay? So now's the time to get this truth while it's there. All right? Immerse yourself in, if the Lord gives you his name, immerse yourself in prayer, man. Immerse yourself in learning this truth. All right? You don't have to be an intricate historian, just know enough. The Lord will give you enough if you are his sheep to get through. All right? You know your core prayers. You know what you can eat, what you can't eat. All right? You'll know about the high holy days that most of us are, that can keep on, to the best of our ability, you know, and you'll watch unto prayer, man, and you'll watch the prophets, you'll learn, you'll be ready and prayed up, and you'll need that covering, because when all this hell breaks loose, you'll need that covering, and that whole armor of God is the covering of Yahweh Hashem Mashai, man. Okay, and ultimately it's up to the Lord. You can have the name, because there's a lot of people that bug outs that fell out of the truth that have the name, but they don't have the covering. So this is a very, very serious time, man. Okay, the whole world in blackness, man. No electricity. People are gonna go crazy out here, man. All right. A lot of people are going to be dying. The electricity is attached to a lot of machines. People keeping people alive. In hospitals, in their homes. Children need food. Food running out. Hot and cold water. Just that alone, that subtracting electricity out of this modern world, is going to bring the world to its knees. How much more starvation, war, grape, troops, army, martial law troops, marauders, gangs, demons. All right? So you're going to need Yahweh Shemashai to cover you and guide you, man. All right? You're going to need all the help from Yahweh Shemashai, because we can't get through this without the Lord. All right? What does the scripture say? He that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved, man. We're coming to that time. Because this shit is, listen, you can talk about it. You can watch all these things in movies. Yeah, where is the video segment, man? You can watch all these things in movies, right? But when it's happening to you in real time, it's a completely different story. Because from the comfort of your home, you know what I mean? Especially Jake's out there, smoked up a spliff or whatever, or you're drunk. Nothing wrong with drinking, by the way. All right, at home. All right, or you're drunk. You're sitting behind a nice warm winter blanket or whatever, sitting on your recliner watching a scary movie about blackouts and zombies and shit. Twiddling your toes and shit. Mike episode say, twiddling your toes and shit with your robe on. You might have your hood on and that all cozy and shit. Just got out of the bath, feeling all fresh and cozy and warm and toasty. Watching a scary movie is okay then, right? But when it's happening to you in real time, it's a completely different situation. All right? This world is going to be brought to its knees.
When they're assessing whether we've got enough power stations, they assess things against an average cold spell. Now, the question then is, what happens if we get a really cold spell? The kind of thing we saw in sort of 2010 and 2011, 2012, we had days, weeks of really, really cold weather. And I think there is a major concern as to whether the UK grid could cope with that any longer. We have a lot of really old power stations that essentially probably won't run for 2 weeks flat out. Now, they'll probably just break down. So if that happens, I think we are looking at major blackouts. We could lose half the country. Now, if that happens when temperatures are, -8, -10, as they were in 2010, people are going to die, and it's that serious. And I think we need politicians to start asking questions about this. Ask Ed Miliband in Parliament about whether the grid can cope with this, because I don't think anybody's taking this seriously enough.
No, I don't think they are, because it is quite an actual sort of fragile thing, isn't it? The national grid, because when you do get close, as we have done quite often in recent months, to a blackout and to a brownout, as they used to call it in New York when I lived there, you don't really understand what that's like until it happens.
No,
when it does happen, you literally have no control over it.
Absolutely, and we saw this in Spain recently, where they lost the whole country, the whole grid went down, and people died. Now, people were, I think 11 people died, mainly because they had medical devices that relied on electricity, and the backup supplies failed. But if they hadn't have fixed that fault in Spain within the sort of the 24-hour period in which they did, things were going to get very serious. You have to understand that in a lot of the country, you wouldn't have any water supplies. Okay, now I'm okay where I am. My water supply is gravity fed, but all over the south of England, you need electric pumps to get you the water.
There you go. Along with electricity, you need water as well. Clean water, or what this world would call clean water. All right, you need an electric supply to pump the water. No water to wash. Okay, forget about this warm water. There'll be no water at all. Survival, the elderly, patients, the children, human beings generally. All right, add that into the mix.
Now, if you don't have water, you're getting into serious problems. You're getting into disease, all kinds of things.
Right.
So, this is a very serious problem, and the grid is becoming more unstable. I hear things. I know people who know people, who work in the grid, and the grid is probably not able to cope with a very cold spell, but there's also major concerns about whether it can get through the very low demand levels in summer. I think next summer is going to be quite interesting as well. This is just not on the radar in Westminster, I think, and I think it should be. And I would like to see Claire Coutinho asking some very hard questions of Ed Miliband.
Yeah, but isn't the problem with the Tories, though, that they're pretending that they've now converted to not so keen on net zero as they used to be, but they still kind of have got a history of having done all sorts of things, terrible things, which have put us very, very firmly in the net zero firmament.
Yeah, they have a very difficult marketing job, don't they? They are saying the right things now. Kemi said we're not going to do net zero at least by 2050, and they're going to do away with a huge chunk of the subsidies.
I mean, coming up in the 80s as a child, this shit never happened, man. Electricity was good, water supply was good, right? Never had the internet, obviously, at that time. Now everyone's going to this full fiber internet, and the internet service is worse. It's like they're giving you all these new things, but it's not actually as good as the old shit. As they say, old is gold, right? And what a lot of people saying. There's not much left, about a minute or so left of the news segment. The UK is now a third world country. We're sat on vast reserves of coal and millions of barrels of oil in the North Sea, yet this government wants to build unreliable, expensive windmills. They shut down power stations without having adequate alternatives in place. Nut zero stupidity. I'm not going to go into the real minute details, but the fact of the matter is, they just, hey man, the powers that be is fucking around as they usually do. All right. I've got a few reasons why. Outdated grid as the reason why. The UK's grid was designed in the 1930s and not well suited for today's needs, particularly for transmitting power long distances from new offshore wind farms to cities. Because I think they're trying to what's it called? They're trying to what's the technical word? They're trying to not merge. Is it? Should I use the term merge? They're trying to what's the IT term? Let's just say this: they're trying to merge the new with the old, and it's not corresponding with each other. All right, the technology. Okay, I mean, ultimately, it's done by design. Whatever the background details are of, how the wheels are supposed to churn in the infrastructure they're trying to create, right, is ultimately done by design. All right. Let's go back to the news segment, finish it off.
And the carbon taxes, that's great. But I think there is a question as to whether voters are going to say, yes, we'll give you another chance, or whether they're going to, stick with reform, as the polls suggest, they have shifted already and are going to give reform a chance. And, I think to the average man in the street, there are questions to be asked on both sides. Have reform got the policy making machine to actually deliver, and do we trust the Conservatives if they?
All right, let's get to the point. It was just okay. Let's just go here.
This isn't just a
damn commercials.
I'm Lucy Johnston, and this is GB News Originals. Please don't forget to press the subscribe button below. Now, Britain could face blackouts lasting up to 2 weeks because the government has failed to account for the country's unpredictable weather in its drive.
When it actually does go to the proper blackout, they're going to give you little incremental blackout situation here and there. You know what I mean? I think Spain recently they did it. I think it was a couple of days or whatever. And I think Ireland, it happened a couple of years ago. It was like 8 days straight through. And then in the UK and Spain, I think it was a couple of days as well. Right here in the UK, it was a few months ago. It was only back for 2 hours, and people were going nuts out in the streets. All right, and when it goes out permanently, no electricity whatsoever, you're gonna see this world really change in a drastic manner, man. Okay, once that electricity goes out, you're damn near going back to how some of the people would say prehistoric times.
Towards net zero, energy experts have warned. A major study undertaken by 2 engineering academics has found that the UK energy system is vulnerable to long periods of calm weather when wind turbines generate almost no power. Wind energy is at the heart of the government's green plans, and they're pledging that 95% of the UK's electricity will come from clean sources, that's solar and wind, by 2030. But these researchers say this strategy is nonsensical, and it's based on overly optimistic predictions that underestimate the so-called wind lulls that we have. And these periods can last up to 14 days when there's little or no wind across the country. And that could throw us into blackouts. Take a look at this clip from breakfast this morning.
Now, the nation could soon be facing blackouts lasting up to 2 weeks. As energy experts warn the UK's energy system is vulnerable.
It's a major study by 2 leading engineering academics, and it's found that long periods of calm weather means, guess what? Wind turbines won't generate any power.
Well, experts say the government has failed to account for the country's unpredictable weather in its net zero drive.
Let's talk to our science editor, Lucy Johnson. Morning, Lucy. I mean, it seems like a statement of the blooming obvious.
Well, the government sort of denies it, but what these academics have done is they've compared real world data with the official data, and they've found that it hasn't accounted for these long periods of calm. And what they say is that this will or could lead to long blackouts. They're concerned because the government or the government's got a drive to making all our energy come from clean sources, 95% of it by 2030. And we've only got about 7.5 days of gas reserves if our energy falls short. And in contrast, places like France and Germany have months of backup. And what they say is that because we have these periods of calm, which they've seen in the data, this could lead to these blackouts. Actually, in South Africa, they have a similar thing. They call it load shedding, and the lights go off. It could affect if hospitals and critical infrastructure rely on renewable energies, it could even affect those. So it is a real concern. And they're saying that this is what they call
electricity going out, planes in midair, you know? Think about all the things that require electricity, you know? Things just falling out of the sky, mobile phones not working, telephone lines going off. I've also noticed a lot of companies are having problems with their telephone lines. A lot of government council type organizations here in the UK. I don't know how you Jakes are feeling in the States, you know, when you call somewhere, but a lot of these lines are not working no more.
Call a nonsensical
Or they're having problems.
Policy, and it is uneconomic, and they're calling for more gas reserves and a smoother and sort of slower transition to renewable sources.
Okay, let's go to a couple of scriptures. So we know that what's going on. All right, they're just trying to transition from the old to the new, to use renewable resources, and just knocking down old power stations, and they don't have a contingency plan in place where the electricity requirements can be met. Simple as that. And this new so-called green energy is not coming up to par. That's what it comes down if you summarize it up. But there's a whole bunch of other shit that they add to it. And also, it's all Yahweh Hashem Yashai that's controlling the narrative, because at the end of the day, this is the Lord's plan, and this kingdom has to come to a close, and the Lord is crushing it, man, piece by piece. You know? A couple of scriptures lined up. I think okay, yeah. Let's go here. No, that's not the one. Be ready, Son of Man, King James Version. I mean, there's several scriptures on this one. Matthew 24, verse 44. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Okay, there's a saying that Jake uses, which is obviously from the scriptures. Be ready so you don't have to get ready, you know. Watch the apostles, watch the elders, watch the prophets of Great Millstone. All right, you're going to see the prophecies being ticked off. Okay, and they're going to happen in numerical order or in spiritual order, however the Lord has done it pursuant to the scriptures. Example, the charagma, or the RF to the I to the D, MARK, has to come out before World War III. So we're seeing the crushing of the economy, jobs, electricity, lack of uncertainty, no optimism, people miserable, people are vaccinated with that snake juice stuff, right? So you've got a lot of crazy people walking around, you know. People are having, the curses are coming on the enemy, so they can't handle it. The so-called white man's been living lovely for a couple of 100 years, right? So the curses are coming on them, so they don't like it, you know. That racial hatred, you know, the powers that be are doing their problem reaction solution with their AI and their crisis actors, you know, doing all these flash robberies. Some are probably real, some are probably acted out to make that hatred happen between the pale flesh. Between the pale flesh and the brown's flesh, mainly between Jacob and Esau, right? You can see the chariots in the sky, the government talking about World War III, arms race, right? Revelation 11:14, World War III, right? Martial law troops, digital wallet. You can see all these things that I've mentioned. I mentioned more than several there. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, everything coming together. So Stay girded up and ready, and put on the whole armour of Yahweh Bashim Yashai. All right, so we have to be ready when the Lord comes, man, as well. Obviously the Lord's going to come in like a thief in the night, but we look, the hopeful elect look forward to it. It's still going to be scary. Don't get it twisted. We're talking about the only begotten Son of Yahweh, man. You know what I mean? We're talking about Yahweh Shai. All right, that's very powerful, man. That's our King. All right, our big brother, man. The Son of Yahweh, man. His Majesty Yahweh Shai, Brakti Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai. Think about it, man. I see an Independence Day when that chariot and the smoke clears and the chariot is there, man. That cloud clears. That's a powerful image. And the Lord's just think about it. You're gonna be scared, but we have to be ready. Knowing the time that we're in. One more scripture comes to mind. And the same thing in this case as well. Just be ready that we're in that time where, things are going to start happening. If you've got the money for it, extra water, Salaki for that. I just sneezed. If you've got extra water, you've got transformers. I don't know. I'm not too technical. Transformers, I'm assuming, make noise. So that will attract other neighbors. They say, oh, yeah, they've got electricity. If you've got kind of supplies, buy wet wipes or whatever to keep yourself clean. Like in the book of Eli, you see Denzel using an old KFC wet wipe. I don't think they even have those no more. I remember them being in the KFC boxes back in the 80s. When they had those cardboard boxes before the bucket. I remember my dad bringing those boxes home. Yes, so all sorts of little things that you can do. Spiritual power will be given to the elect as well. That's why to some of the elect before the great change. So there's a whole bunch of things coming, man. Matthew 24:44. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. I was going to read another scripture, it's just slipped my mind now after sneezing. What was that? Oh yeah, knowing the time. That's it. Knowing the time, King James Version. High time to wake out of sleep. That's the one. Yeah. Let me see if it pops up here. Yeah. Romans 13:11. And that, knowing the time, that now it is time. Salakia. Excited. Romans 13:11. And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than we believed. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. So that time is coming. But there's going to be lots of trials and tribulations before we get the kingdom, man. All that loveliness is not going to be achieved easily, man. Where the Lord's going to put the Jake through the ringer. But we're getting, the hopeful elect are getting their licks now. It's best to get them now rather than with the rest of the world, because they're going to be put through it. But we have the hopeful elect have the covering of Yahweh B'Hashem Yashai Abaratazah. We have that covering. We have that confidence. All right, so it's going to be gruesome. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be uncomfortable. But Yahweh B'Hashem Yashai is going to be with us to give us that comfort. All right. Fret not, Jake. We're going home soon. These things have to happen before we go home. All right. You don't want to be prolonged. You don't want to be just in limbo, man, hanging about in this kingdom. Oh yeah, I'm getting by. I'm okay. I hustle all week just to get to a weekend so I can sleep in one day a week or whatever. That's not living, man. Just because you're alive doesn't mean you're living. We're going to be living in the kingdom. All right. But anyway, I'll leave it there now before I keep yapping on. Salakia for that, all praises to Yahweh, B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, B'Hashem Rakak Badash, Bawathabad Babal, Kwam Yashrala. One more thing. Subscribe to the men of the Lord, the men of Great Millstone, those sincere Israelites, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, and also those that are not specifically mentioned on the 12 tribe sign. Okay. The reason why for that is because America is ground zero, so it's focused on the tribes or Jake that's located there, because that is Egypt or Rome all over again. Okay, but Jake is scattered to the four corners of the earth. Hence the reason the second Exodus, pursuant to Isaiah 11 and 11 and 11 and 12, Jakes will be picked up from all over the world, and there's Jakes in every country around the world. And some of yous don't even have the original look anymore. All right, some of you look like honkies, some of you look like, Mr. Miyagi, you know what I mean? Some of you, hey, we look like everyone now, but we'll get our original look back soon. Anyway, all praise to Yahweh Hashem Shai.